In this lesson, I want to show you how to add some great slicers and timelines onto your pivot table to add even more filters. So the slicers and the timelines are visual type of filters. Now the slicer started in Excel 2010, and then they added something new in Excel 2013 that's called a timeline. So the timeline will not be available in Excel 2010. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of the numbers on the pivot table. Now I'm going to keep the chart here that we made in the previous lesson because I want to show you that the slicer and the timeline will change the chart as well. I'll pick on one number on the pivot table, and then I'll pick on the Analyze menu up top. Analyze. And over here I'll say Insert Slicer. Now you'll see your fields here. You can choose as many as you wanted to. The more fields that you choose, the more combinations of data you'll be able to do. So I'll pick on destination, tickets, and commission. Now I could have chosen more than that, but this will make to the point that I'm trying to make. So I'll click on OK. Now these are slicer windows. Now I'm going to move these over here. You can resize them. You can move the windows. Move these over here. Good. I'm going to resize that one for a second. Good. Move it right over here. And then I'll move this one over here. Good. Now I'll pick on Chicago. And notice how that changed the pivot table, that changed the chart. Of course, I'd probably move the chart over here somewhere, but you get the picture. So it's only now going to show you the ones whose destination is Chicago. So it's like a filter, except it's more visual. And by the way, the pivot table can only filter the fields that are on the pivot table. With the slicer, then you can add all these different combinations to get really any combination of data that you wanted to. So I went to ones from Chicago that had 2 tickets. I'll pick on 2 there. That changed the pivot table in the chart. And then I'll pick on yes over here. And that changed everything again. This is really amazing to me. I can get the exact records that we're looking for because of the slicers. Now to get everything back again, you'll pick on the funnel on the corner of the slicer windows. So I'll pick on this funnel and this one and this one. And now everything is back, as we can see. Now the next person comes along and they want to see Chicago, but they also want to see some other ones. So I'm going to hold down my control key. I just held down my control key on my keyboard and I'll pick on Dallas, Duluth, Fargo. You can pick as many as you wanted to. Now when I lift my finger, it'll show the records who has all of those different destinations. Then I'll pick on 2 over here, and I'll pick on, I'm going to hold down control again. I'll pick on 4 and 5. And then I'll pick on yes over here. Notice how the chart's changing, the pivot table's changing. So when we get all of this working together, this is called a dashboard. So the slicer windows are a major component of the dashboard. Now I'm going to get everything back again. So I'll pick on the little funnel on the corner of the slicer windows, and now everything is back. Now in Excel 2013, they added something new that's called a timeline, which is a slicer that's based on a date field. So we could do a date range. So from here, I'll pick on the Analyze menu, and I'll pick on Insert Timeline. Now the timeline is based on a date field, so I'll pick on Flight Date, and I'll click on OK. This is a timeline. So I'm going to move that right over here, and watch how it works. I'll pick up the white square and I'll drag it so that I can see January of 2014. There it is. And I'll pick on the blue space below January of 2014 right there. And notice how the records changed again because now it's only January of 2014, and that changed the chart. Now I'm going to drag this over to April. Then it'll show everything from January to April. I'll pick on Duluth. I'll pick on 4 over here, 5. I mean, this is really amazing to me. I can get the exact records that I'm looking for with the slicer and the timeline. So imagine if we had 4 or 5 slicer windows open, or even more, then you can get any combination of data that you wanted to. Then you combine that with the filters that are already there, and truly, you can get any combination of data that you wanted to with the slicers and with the timeline. You get that working with the chart, you get all this working together, and this is what Microsoft is calling a dashboard. Now you can keep those there for the next time by saving your workbook. And that's what many people do. They set those up and they save them. or we can also delete the slicer windows. So I'm going to pick on the funnels on the corner of each slicer window, and I'll get everything back again, as you can see. So we can keep those there. If you want to delete them, I'll pick on this slicer window and I'll hit my delete key on my keyboard. I'll pick on the word destination and delete that. And I'll pick on the word flight date and delete that with my delete key. Now I'm just going to move this window to the side for a second. I'll close that window. And then I'll pick on the word tickets and delete that. Now if I want to get my field list back again, I'm going to right click on one of the numbers and I'll pick on show field list. Good. Now let's see how we got the slicer and the timeline windows open again. You pick one of your numbers in the pivot table. You pick on the Analyze menu up top. And then here we have Insert Slicer. That would be there if you have Excel 2010 or 13 or 16. Then once I do that, I can pick and choose as many fields as I wanted to. The more that you choose, the more combination of data you'll be able to do. And then I can also, if you have Excel 2013 or 16, you can pick on the timeline, which is based on a date field, so you can do date ranges as well. So those are powerful new additions to Excel called the slicer and the timeline.